Today we shall talk about and meditate upon what Christopher Isherwood called the story of a phenomenon, Sri Ramakrishna's life. We will pick up the story in Dakshineshwar, the Kali temple, which is on the outskirts of Calcutta, on the northern part of Calcutta. Sri Ramakrishna, who was born in a remote village, Kamarpukur, not so remote these days. He comes to Dakshineshwar with his elder brother, who is now the priest of Kali. The temple had been established in the 1840s by Rani Rashmani. Rani literally means a queen in Indian languages. So she was not quite a queen, but very regal in her competence in managing her family's estates. She was very rich, very powerful, very devoted. Rani Rashmani and her son-in-law, Mathur Nath Bishwas. So Mathur Babu, who was the son-in-law of Rani Rashmani, and she depended a great deal on Mathur Babu to manage the estates. And so he was also a very competent person, a powerful person, strong-willed, man of great, strong character. Both of them were immediately fascinated by the young, at that time, Ramakrishna was in his late teens. He was born in 1836. So when he came in the early 1850s to Calcutta, he was in his late teens. So they were fascinated by this young priest. Ram Kumar was the priest of Kali for a time being, and Ramakrishna was asked to assist him. Ramakrishna immediately said that he was deeply interested in spiritual life. He would have loved to assist in the temple, but his problem was, which was a lifelong problem, he would have nothing to do with, jewelry, money, wealth, and the image of Kali. Those of you who have seen it in Dakshineshwar, it's a small, about 3 feet high, and but very beautiful image, and decked with gold ornaments. So Ramakrishna didn't want any part of that. By this time, his nephew, Hriday Ram, who was to play such a big role in his life, in subsequent life, he had come from their village, and he also got employment in the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. Hriday Ram was an interesting character. He was a nephew, but he was only about 4 years younger than Ramakrishna. He loved Ramakrishna, and it was kind of a very possessive kind of love, but he served Ramakrishna. And he said, I'll take care of the jewels, don't worry. He had no qualms about such things. So that's how Sri Ramakrishna got introduced to Mother Kali, who became his lifelong object of adoration and worship. Ram Kumar died. I think it was around 1856 probably. And he had played a very central role in Ramakrishna's life because having lost his father at a young age, he looked up to Ram Kumar. So losing Ram Kumar was again like losing his father all over again. And he sought refuge straight away in Mother Kali. So he became the priest of Kali, and he would spend all his waking hours, as long as the temple was open. The temple opens and closes at particular hours. So as long as the temple was open, he would stay in the temple. He would perform his worship devotedly for long hours, and even outside the worship hours, he would sit in the temple, he would meditate, he would pray, he would sit there looking longingly at Mother Kali. His attitude was that, is it only an image? Isn't it real? Does God actually exist, and can I see God? And he would pray and cry to the mother that you have shown yourself to great devotees like Ram Prasad and others. Won't you show yourself to me? You see, at this point, one might wonder, why does someone like Sri Ramakrishna, whom we worship as an avatar, an incarnation of God, why does Sri Ramakrishna have to perform sadhana, spiritual practice, and try to see God if he is himself an incarnation of God? The whole purpose of an incarnation is to show us the way to God, is to confirm for us, for humanity, once again in our period in history, that religion is true, that spirituality is fact, and that God can be realized, God can be experienced. And this realization of God, experience of God, is the purpose of human life. And to do that, Sri Ramakrishna had to go through all of this. Was it play acting? The opinion is divided on this. The traditional Hindu view is an incarnation of God is always aware of his or her divine nature. But there's another view. Swami Sarvapriyananda, the biographer of Sri Ramakrishna, who wrote Sri Ramakrishna, the great master, he says one should not discount the human side of an avatar. It's not play acting. When God comes in a human form, God also takes on human attributes. So the urge to experience God, the struggle, the despair, the joys and the ecstasies, all of which we would experience ourselves, those also the incarnation experiences in full measure. Otherwise, if it's just play acting, it would not be convincing for us. Sri Ramakrishna himself would tell this story about three friends, who were going on a journey, and there was the high wall, and they didn't know what was on the other side of the wall. And with great difficulty, one of them climbed on top of the wall and looked on the other side and burst out in laughter and in joy and jumped on the other side. The other two were mystified. What happened? The second one climbed up and saw something, and his face beamed in delight and cried out in joy and jumped over on the other side. The third one thought, what's going on? What's there on the other side? What's so wonderful? And he climbed over and he saw this mart of joy, festivities, wonderful, going on the other side. And he too was about to join there, jump over the other side. But then he thought, what about all the poor people in our village? Those who are suffering the drab lives full of struggle and strife. Who will give them the good news? So instead of jumping on the other side, he turned around and he went back to call people and show them the way. That's the avatara. That's the world teacher. So Sri Ramakrishna had to go through that. He would disappear. There were forests on the near the temple garden. There were forests, and he would go in there to meditate. Even the temple was closed. At night, he would spend his nights in prayer and meditation. And Hriday, who would serve his uncle with great devotion, he was curious. He was very possessive. So he was curious, where is this guy going? And so he would follow him. And he was surprised, who goes into the jungle at this hour in the night? To scare Ramakrishna, he sometimes, from the lurking in the forest, he would throw stones to scare Ramakrishna, had to no effect. One day he was scandalized to discover that Ramakrishna was sitting under a tree and meditating. He had thrown away his cloth. He was sitting stark naked and meditating. Even the sacred thread which a Brahmin wears, which is never supposed to discard, Sri Ramakrishna had thrown that aside also, which is very scandalous for a conservative Brahmin in those days. And Hriday scolded. He said, "Uncle, what are you doing? You will lose status in society. Why do you throw all this aside?" And Sri Ramakrishna said, "This is the only way to meditate. You have to cast aside all bondages of the world." The three bondages he would mention. In Bengali, he had a way of rhyming and puns, which is sometimes very difficult to translate. It was very effective in Bengali, actually. Lajja, ghrina, bhoy, teen thakte noy. So shame, hatred, and fear. These three prevent you from realizing God in religion, in religious life. So these are the three things you must give up in religious life. Shame, or fear of being embarrassed. What are my friends going to say? That you're not cool anymore. You've become a religious nut. So that shame, or that fear of being embarrassed in society, not being cool anymore. That's very much there even now. It's always been there. You see, mostly people would like to be religious, but only to the extent that it is fashionable to be so. So in modern society, for example, in the modern West, not so much in the United States, but maybe in Western Europe, It's not at all fashionable to be religious. So what's to be fashionable? You have to show that you are not religious in any kind of way. Maybe a little new agey would be all right, but that's all. So it's always been that way. Just as an aside, we all know the famous biography of Sri Ramakrishna, which Christopher Isherwood wrote, inspired by Swami Prabhavananda, his guru. So it's a classic. Many people have been introduced in the English-speaking world to Sri Ramakrishna, and these days especially, through Isherwood's work. But many people do not know that the sacrifice that he undertook to write that. Because I have read the reviews written here in New York, I think New York Times Review of Books, I don't know which one, in the top newspapers, reviews, and the tone of the reviews was disapproving. That it's a good book, but why does such a promising author, a part of the fashionable set, why does he have to become involved in some obscure Eastern cult and things like that, It's like the people are disappointed in him. He could have done better. That's their feeling. So Isherwood had to go through that. He knew that this is what's going to come in his career if he does that. So shame, modesty, or kind of a fear of being humiliated. Sri Ramakrishna said you have to give up all that if you really want to be absorbed in God. Sri Ramakrishna would always do it practically. Whatever he understood, theoretically, philosophically, he would actually translate it into practice. We know the famous story of him throwing coins and dirt into the river. Again, in Bengali, it rhymes. Taka mati mati taka, which means, taka means rupees or money, and mati means earth or clay. And he says they are equally worthless. And that the idea, and so to imbibe that, he would take handfuls of both and throw them into the river. Somebody wrote that this is too much. It's good to understand and good to be detached, not to be possessive about money, but why do you actually have to throw away money into the river? And someone recently humorously said, oh, you didn't understand Ramakrishna. He actually knew that one day earth, land would be more valuable than money. So he was pointing it out to us that you should invest in land. No. Anyway, so he would literally do that. To overcome the pride of caste, which does not make too much sense in modern Manhattan today, but which was very, very powerful in, say, 19th century India. He actually went to a sweeper's house. In the washroom, in the bathroom of the sweeper's house, he cleaned the latrine with his matted hair in order to overcome any kind of feeling of superiority or disgust. So he would literally do it. What he understood, that all is same, that we are all equal, that we are all manifestations of one reality, he would actually take it down to physical practice. We know how the incredible story of how he literally stormed God's heaven. I want to see God. I want to see my Divine Mother. He would cry and weep. And at sunset, on the banks of the Ganges, this was a common sight in those days to see the new young priest weeping bitterly, Mother, another day has gone. The sun is setting on another day, and I still have not seen you. And people in the temple garden would think that this poor boy has come from the village. Maybe he's missing his mother. His elder brother died, and maybe he's missing his mother. That's why the poor kid is crying. But he was crying for the mother of the universe. He would pray, he would meditate long hours, whole nights in meditation. He said that one day the pain was so much in his heart. He gives an example. In India, people use thin towels called gamcha, thin towels for wiping their bodies after a bath, and then they wring it out, wring the water out. So he says, as people wring a wet towel to wring out the water, I felt somebody was wringing my heart, so much pain in my heart because I could not see God, I could not see the Divine Mother. And it was unbearable. He was in the temple at that time, and he went and caught hold of the sword of Mother Kali, which was there. He said, I was planning to cut off my head. There's no way I would go on living with this pain. And then he had the first great vision. And the first vision was he saw suddenly waves of light, of luminosity, all around, rushing towards him. And then they all crashed upon him. That was his description afterwards. And he lost outward consciousness.